The High Priestess. The highest manifestations of man in his earthly life are intelligence and will. If this binary is neutralized in a person, then its existence proceeds under favorable conditions. Let us return to the ternary spirit, astral, matter. A person needs a healthy mind, a healthy astrosome, and a healthy body. The mental monad of a person is in itself healthy due to its high origin, which will be discussed later. It is only necessary that it be active in a person, and then consciousness is ensured in life, which can be identified with the presence of spiritual aspirations. A healthy astrosome will give an element called mental harmony. This is the third term of the binary, consciousness, power. This harmony will ensure the productivity of the totality of passions in man, and this totality is what is colloquially called personality. If someone tells us how and what he wants, his I will become familiar to us. A healthy body will ensure the correct transmission of volitional impulses in a person. It will balance the world of physical needs and bring into life an element of power realization. What do we study first of all? The physical body, the astral, or the spirit? The body and its functions are occupied by other specialists. Manifestations of the spirit, its aspirations, are also not alien to people who are thoughtful and inclined to engage in philosophy. Our role at the present moment is the study of the astrosome, and therefore the astral world, as the medium in which it circulates. So if, firstly, we needed to ask ourselves, what is a person as an active unit? Then secondly, the next step should be to seek to know the astral world. The mark of the second arcanum in the Hebrew alphabet is Beth. The numerical value of this sign is 2. If the hieroglyph man was assigned to the first sign, then the hieroglyph of the mouth of the man will refer to the second sign. The scientific name of the corresponding tarot picture is Gnosis. Occultists often refer to it as la Porte du Sanctuaire, the door of the sanctuary. Its vulgar name is la Papesse. The image shows 2 columns in the background. The red pillar, usually with the sign of the sun, is called Arcanum. The other, dark blue, sometimes black, decorated with the sign of the moon, has the name of Boaz. The half moon between the columns corresponds to the Middle Masonic language. On the card, this space is hidden by a curtain. In the foreground, we see a woman sitting upon a cubic seat. The symbol of infinity, above the head of the preceding card, is replaced here by the adornment, horns and full moon, on the head of the woman. Her face is covered by a semi-transparent veil, and the whole figure is shrouded in white clothing. In her lap she holds a roll of papyrus, sometimes a book, half hidden by folds of clothing. On the chest a cross, whose arms are of equal length. The names of Arcanum 2, in the planes of archetype, man, and nature, are respectively Divina Substantia, Femina, and Natura Naturata. We will try to study this Arcanum. Its numerical value indicates that the unit should be divided into and polarized as often as necessary to participate in the process of life. The very figure of the letter Beth, as well as the 2 columns, clearly shows the method that prevails in the deductions of occult science. Let us remember the great law of analogy, whose formula, in verses of the Emerald Tablet, is, in its Latin translation, expressed as follows. What is below is similar, analogous, not equal, to that which is above, and that which is above is like unto that which is below, to accomplish the wonders of the one thing. Note that the upper part of the letter Beth is only similar to the lower one, and that the right column is only similar to the left column, but they are not the same. This indication of the method for acquiring the knowledge, together with the representation of the gate of the sanctuary on the card, is why the name Gnosis is given to Arcanum 2. The horns indicate the binary principle. The columns also show the binary principle, but among them a woman is sitting, an individual being who must neutralize this binary. The woman is a symbol of passivity, and even more so when she is seated. This posture demonstrates a state of expectation, of meditation and receptivity that the one desirous of studying must possess. In addition, the card tells us that the secrets of science are accessible only to a penetrating intelligence. They are half hidden by a veil. The results of the scientific investigations of sages are recorded in the writings, the laws of nature, in his living book. But to assimilate the knowledge contained therein is only possible within the folds of clothing or the mantle, which isolates us from worldly agitation, conditioning, and other harmful influences. The hieroglyph of the Arcanum, the human mouth, symbolizes a refuge, a place where it is possible to shelter, a building or temple dedicated to study. The two jaws that are similar but not equal, illustrating the law of analogy given above. The Arcanum shows the importance of in-depth study of the binary masculine principle, feminine principle. In Arcanum 1 we noted above the head of man the unitary symbol of infinity. In Arcanum 2 we find the horns, that is, a more tangible element. The mother number is more materialized than the father. The passive is always more concrete than the active. The subtle element, active, the fruitful element, passive, more tangible. However, the passive must be condensed to the exact measure of the active, and it should suit you. What is the purpose of the coexistence of these elements? This goal is the very act of fertilization. Here it is symbolized by a cross on the woman's chest. The vertical part of the cross is a phallus. The horizontal is a cetus. This solar cross is absolutely equivalent to the so-called stauros of Gnostic symbolism or lingam of Hindu symbolism. So the second Arcanum suggests the idea of a binary and, moreover, clearly indicates its productivity. Another configuration of these principles, more philosophical as we shall see later, is given by the Arcanum 10 of the Tarot, the odd sign, as a masculine principle, and the fifth, Hay sign, as a feminine one. Arcanum 2 belongs to the feminine principle. The moon, appearing on the Arcanum, indicates the principle of motherhood. The moon is the world uterus. Astrologically, the Arcanum belongs to the moon, which also indicates the principle of motherhood. The corresponding astrological character of this lunar Arcanum is the universal mother. Thus, Arcanum 2 reminds us of the binary and indicates clearly its fecundicity. Let us look briefly at the basic phases of this fecundity. Let's take the example of two equal forces but of opposing directions, which, applied to a material point, condition the equilibrium of that point. This rough scheme of a binary will help us to understand that, in general, manifestations are productive due to the existence of an opposition. Without it, they remain unproductive. Is it worth preaching virtue in a society of absolutely virtuous people? Does it make sense to tease someone in whom this will not cause the slightest reaction? Is it possible to lean on an object that goes out of hand without showing the slightest resistance? Keep this circuit in mind every time you have to balance, i.e., modus vivendi, in any field, that is, an equilibrium, whatever the field of its application. The line delimiting the positive and negative fields in the binary and balancing them can be displaced according to the circumstances, but the balance of the movement is always governed by the above scheme. An act or behaviour that neutralizes the great binary of good and evil can, after a short time, fall into the region of good or evil, and at this new moment the binary is neutralized by a completely different act or behaviour. Under certain conditions it may be appropriate to limit ourselves simply not to help a person, but we may, 5 minutes later, feel that our conscience compels us to help them through a certain beneficial and elevated action. The dividing line is in the balance, but the principle of neutralization has not changed. But let's move on to another phase of using the binary. This other phase can be called dynamic, if the first is conditionally assigned to the name static. Again, I will give rough mechanical diagram. The same forces, parallel and equal to each other, are applied in opposite directions to two different points of the solid. This gives us an idea of rotational motion. This is exactly what we wanted to get, but we want to obtain yet more. The idea of a stormy movement, of a whirlwind. Next, let's imagine this movement applied to the astral matter. The impetus astral vortices provoked by the powerful effort and will and imagination, forming swirls that spread and grow like sprouts, are governed by the same laws. It is not permissible to reveal the secret of the general formation of these, but we can allude to a particular case in which man instinctively creates such eddies which form individualized coagulates of matter and can be clearly perceived, proving thus its realizing power. This work is linked to the matter of the neutralization of the life-death binary. We have touched another initiation binary, spirit matter, neutralized by the astral plane as a secondary plane. It is therefore appropriate here to give a general outline of the knowledge of this plane, which for the first time will be limited to acquaintance with its inhabitants. Indeed, generally speaking, this familiarization can be carried out either inductively by means of relations with the mentioned inhabitants and recording the results of these relations, or deductively, based on the definition of the astral plane. At your stage of occult development, only the second is available to you. Apply it. The astral plane, by definition, is adjacent to the mental and physical. This means that imprints and reflections of those elements of these planes that are close to its area should be visible in it. The very condensed and typically grouped collectivities of ideas are reflected in the astral plane of the so-called astro-ideas, i.e. ideas already requested by the form. These astro-ideas are caught by metaphysicians and other scientists at those moments of their mental work, when the question is about choosing forms for already chosen ideas. Often the same astral idea is caught by different scientists in closely related subplanes, and then we see the simultaneous emergence of two or more systems, very similar but not identical in form. Recall the generation of the infinitesimal calculus on the one hand by Leibniz, differential calculus, and on the other by Newton, fluxia method. Acts and phenomena realized in the physical plane through the subtle, higher subplanes of the physical plane are reflected in the astral plane, as if in a mirror, and when these reflections are firmly fixed in this plane, given the so-called astral cliché of events of the physical plane. The astral sphere is not subject to the limited laws of three-dimensional space, nor of the time of a dimension. There you will find clichés of not only past but also future events. You will say that future events are somewhat dependent on the volitional impulses of free individuals. I will answer you, yes, it is, but each of our decisions, every measure we take in the physical plane, partially alters the cliché of future events, and may even erase them. The higher this astral subplane, in which one takes the cliché of the future event, the less that cliché changes and the better it predicts the event. There is a great secret. This is the secret of free will, identical with the secret of the production of astral tourbillons in the most general form. Hence some nebular and apparent contradiction in the presentation of this paragraph. If astronomers are sought after by scientists, then the astral clichés are hunted by the lucidity, the imagination of clairvoyants, fortune tellers, and diviners of every kind. These clichés open to them in a trance, in a dream, etc., states of prevalence of the astral activity of the human essence. The clichés of any anomalies or events of a grandiose nature are easier to catch than others. Hence the opportunity to see the cliché of great crimes, disasters, as well as encouraging events of grandiose world significance. In the case of the person having a certain degree of sensitivity, these clichés may even be perceived in the waking state. Let us now suppose the case of someone conceiving a bad desire in a very common way. That person has not yet realized that desire on the physical plane, but has already sketched the astral intention. By this he gave birth to an entity, by coagulating the astral plane and using the great law of individualization of coagulates. The generated entity does not have a physical body, but there is an astrosome typically expressed, and also a semblance of a mental monad, the idea of evil desire. Such an entity, by the property of its monad, can act, influence only in accordance with this idea. But to whom does its influence extend? First of all, on the father himself, or the artist who painted the astral picture of something evil. This essence or lava encourages him not to forget this evil desire, to repeat his volitional impulse and thereby strengthen the lava itself. It can act on another person inclined to desire the same things in a similar form. So they say that the lava of such and such a person sticks to such and such another. But how to get rid of these larvae, friends or strangers? 3 means can be recommended for this. 1. A conscious volitional effort in the form of a desire not to obey the lava, to defeat it, to drive it away from itself, to act like an artist who scornfully looks at the pornography of his own work. 2. Focus on thought and imagination on another subject or another desire. A strong absorption in this second object will deprive us of the opportunity to correspond with the first. Prayer is the most desirable form of application of this second method. Indeed, strictly speaking, every prayer is an act of concentration, and vice versa. Every act of concentration can be defined as a prayer to God, to oneself, or even to the devil, depending on the nature of concentration. By the devil, we mean here a picture of the scheme of the higher elements distorted to extremes, brought to the synthesis of all anarchies by incorrect reflections and refractions. This method of concentration can be likened to the method of turning away from a harmful picture for contemplating another better one. 3. The use of realisation power based on the physical plane. The destruction of larvae with a magical sword, i.e., a metal tip mounted on an insulating handle, wood, hard rubber, etc., or separated from the operator's hands with an insulating glove, silk, or fur. The action of the magic sword is based on the fact that astral tourbillons change their character near the metal tip so sharply that getting it into the ganglionic node of the astrosome lava causes its complete decay. Lava in this case should be sought in the so-called aura, atmosphere of astral emanations, of the affected lava subject. This atmosphere borders his body. This technique is similar to the destruction of a painting by the complete destruction of the canvas on which it is written. Imagine that a rational, able to concentrate person thinks a good idea, wrapping it in a certain form. He finds that like-minded people agrees with them regarding the form of the idea, and thus creates the collectivity of people who think the general idea in the same form. These people seem to draw a pencil line around the contours of the same figure, thickening these contours and making them more visible. The general idea of these people is clothed in an astrosome called the egregore of collectivity. This egregore, like any astrosome, stores, restores, and encourages the physical body of collectivity to activity and self-preservation, i.e., the totality of the physical resources of its members that are used in the implementation of its ideas. For example, the egregore of a charity will encourage its members to donate and work, help increase the contingent of the members themselves, replace those who have left with new ones, etc. The egregores of collectivities that are hostile to each other in the physical plane are fighting in the astral plane. If, in the physical plane, the enemies of collectivity destroy the physical bodies of its members, the astrosomes of the latter strengthen the egregore in the astral plane. Let us remember the case of the persecution of the adherents of primitive Christendom by the Jews and pagans, which ended with the triumph of the Christian egregore. More detailed information about the egregores and their life is related by me in the study of Arcanum 11. Man has ended physical existence in one of his incarnations. His body disintegrates. According to the unchanging laws of nature, all the elements of this body, up to the vitality of the blood and even to the energy of nerve manifestations, slowly or more gradually come at the disposal of nature and come in handy on other formations. Man remains in the spiritual monad and astrosome. The lowest of the planes in which it can evolve is the astral plane. At this stage he is called elemental. For him, manifestations in the physical plane are possible, but here they are caused by the mediumship of certain subjects from which he borrowed for a while the elements of the lower transitional subplanes of the astral plane and the highest subtlest elements of the physical plane. To facilitate this process of borrowing, We also need temporary passivity of the medium, or the individual will of the magician, or the collective will of the magic chain, or the administrative directive power of some egregore, or something like that. But this is all a coincidence. The normal life of the elementary takes place in the contemplation of astral clichés and in communication with astral beings. These are his comrades in science, in suffering in the field of mob law, in preparation for further incarnations. Among the temporary meetings in the astral plane, meetings with the so-called exteriorized astrosomes of living people are very interesting for the elementary. For a living person, a strong arbitrary or involuntary concentration of his activity on the sphere of astral manifestations is possible. In this state, the physical activity of a person is reduced to an extreme minimum. It must be said that the astrosome not only forms the human body in the womb, not only controls its development, but also maintains its shape, manages the exchange of cells, repairs damage, and when the body comes to decay, it also controls the decay process. The elemental is at first busy with the process of destruction of its material body and the phantom of its nerve fluids. In a word, an astrosome is Brahma and Vishnu and Shiva of the material body. The activity of the astrosome in relation to the physical body is especially intense during a person's sleep, when mens almost does not use the services of the astrosome as a transfer authority, and the astrosome has time to do maintenance work, i.e., nutrition and health. If the astrosome is asked to do only insignificant work on these questions, if, for example, the body is in a state of lethargy, catalepsy, the so-called trance, etc., then the astrosome is almost free and can manifest itself quite vigorously on the field of external objects, on the functions of a foreign body. Treatment of a stranger by exteriorization of his astral body to him, maybe, having stocked upon the fluid energy of some medium, or even having taken it away from your own physical body, manifest yourself at a far distance by mechanical phenomena, knocking, moving objects, touching, light effects, the appearance of the figure of a person in a place far from the location of his physical body, etc. This is a manifestation of the astral energy of a person far from his physical body, and is called his exit in the astral body, or the exteriorization of the astral. It unconsciously occurs in persons severely affected by fear, grief, etc. After all, emotional effects relate to astral activity, or to persons who are plunged into certain types of sleep, lethargy, or catalepsy. Mages and sorcerers deliberately cause the same state in themselves when they need to show their activity at a distance. But every yod has its own he, and the state of manifestation of energy at a distance is associated with the presence of perception at a distance in the corresponding subplanes of the astral plane. They are exteriorized to look out for the astral cliché of earthly beings, to catch the asteroid, to solve a complicated theoretical question, to experimentally familiarize ourselves with what I am presenting to you theoretically. Mental man at this time does not work particularly hard. His activities are forked. On the one hand, he accompanies the astral body, supplying it with a certain presence of volitional impulses in his wandering. On the other, some participation of men's in the guard service over the physical body is recognized, which is exposed to a number of significant dangers during the exteriorization of the astrosome, which will be discussed later. This guard service to some extent guarantees the rapid return of the astrosome to the physical body in case of extreme danger. Regarding the role of the astral body in a person, it is interesting to note two circumstances. First, the absence, the so-called state of exteriorization of the astral body while the physical body is damaged. There is a favorable factor for correcting this damage in the future and even for the realm of pain. If, being subjected to an injection, wound, or etc., you manage to at least partially exteriorize, then the damage was transferred to the turbulence of your astral system a little, and the latter, returning to the body, fixes everything better. The less it was affected by the corrupting influences. This thesis finds its application in the practice of fakirs, piercing themselves various parts of the body and quickly healing them with the energetic activity of the returning astrosome. If, on the contrary, the tourbillons of the astrosome were damaged, or at least with the tip of the magic sword, while this astrosome was exteriorized, that is, it used the physical body as a reference point only to a small extent, then this damage is dangerous for the astral body in the sphere of its lower manifestations, and therefore, in particular, in the sphere of the process of protecting and maintaining the physical body. If an externalized astrosome has at least a secondary ganglionic node damaged, then upon returning the astrosome to the physical body, damage to the astrosome causes a wound in those parts of the physical body that were protected by the activity of the system of this node. The lower the subplane in which you exteriorized, the more sensitive this damage. It remains to say a few words about the elementals, usually attributed by textbooks to the number of inhabitants of the astral plane. These are not astral entities. The elementals have a mental monad directed towards specially involutive activity, an astrosome that forms this activity, and a physical body that is invisible under ordinary conditions by the very uniformity of its structure with the environment in which these elementals operate. Elementals are dominated by chemical and physical phenomena, many physiological processes, etc. If their body is predominantly gaseous, they are called Varies, sylphs. If liquid, with undines, sirens. If solid, dwarfs, gnomes. If their body is more subtle and in structure approaches what we call in this world ether, fire perhaps, then salamanders. There are beings that possess only a mental monad and an astral body and operate involutively in the astral medium, just as elementals operate in the elements. These entities are given the name spiritus directus, astral. There are purely mental beings engaged in involutional processes. Their name is angels.